Hey guys, it's John. This video is about an upcoming feature in Dead by Daylight that was on the public test build this week that I've been very excited about for quite some time. It's bot lobbies. They have added the ability to add bot AI-controlled survivors to your custom games in Dead by Daylight, and the intention is to allow you to practice in custom games with killers that you're unfamiliar with or inexperienced with, and you want to practice against some moving target survivors in a safe environment. I think this is a great addition to the game, first of all, because there's a lot of killers out there. I'm sure everyone has a killer that they're not very good with, that they wish they could be better with, but maybe you don't want to queue up into a public match and just get stomped out, because not everyone likes to learn that way. For example, I played Hillbilly in these bot matches because Billy is one of the characters that I'm worst with. Probably my worst killer. I'm just no good with the chainsaw. I miss almost every time when I go into public matches, and there's only so many times that I like getting stomped in a row. With that said, now that I've explained the appeal of adding these AI-controlled survivors to the custom games, I'm going to answer the question that is on all of your minds if you haven't played against them yet, and that is, how bad are these bots at Dead by Daylight? They're better than I thought they would be. Okay, so let's start off with the positives. First of all, the bots, how do they behave? Well, I have good news for you. The bots will do generators. If left alone, they will do all the generators and they will leave. They only will slow down if you interfere. So at the beginning of the game, unless you can find them pretty quickly as killer, they will usually do at least one generator before you find them. So I'd recommend running like Lethal Pursuer or something just to get into a chase quickly, because that's what you're playing the killer for. They do not concentrate on generators. They're not going to gen rush you, and we'll get into that in a little bit when I start talking about the negatives of these bots. But yeah, for the positives, they do generators, and they actually do have tactics. The main tactics that the bots will employ is actually stealth and distance. They like to stealth more than they like to do loops. They will do that as like a last course of action usually. They prefer to stealth, to hide around corners, to crouch, and just generally not be seen. And their main tactic other than that is to get as much distance as possible. They want to be as far away from you as possible. So they're big hold W gamers, these survivor bots. The good thing is that it gives a pretty realistic chase start against these survivors, because if they're, say, 30 meters away from you on a generator and you are within line of sight, they'll get off the generator and they'll run the other direction. So that's pretty accurate to how actual survivors play. The main positive for these bots, they do have some tactics, they do generators, but most importantly, they're moving targets. And a lot of times, if you're just wanting to play around with Nurse or Hillbilly or Oni or some killer that you just need to get their movement style down, it really helps to have moving targets as the survivors, and they will move. So if you want to practice Nurse, if you're not very good with her, these survivors, they will hold W, and you'll be able to practice, how long you should hold down the mouse to get a certain distance away from them, right? And that's about where the positives end for these bots. I wouldn't say they're exactly bad things about them, because really, like I said, the whole appeal of these survivors being in the matches is for just to be moving practices for you to practice your power on, your killer power. These bots are not going to simulate anything close to an actual match of Dead by Daylight, and there's a lot of reasons for that, so I'll get into some of those now. So first off, probably the biggest thing you'll notice about these bots is that they don't have any perks. You can't put any perks on them. They will not use any, and they will not use any items. Now, I understand the reason for this, right? Is because the AI that controls the survivor bots is very simple. But it does make it kind of boring to play killer against. And so, like, you're not really getting a realistic chase with these survivors. They're not going to use dead hard. If you slug them, they're not going to use unbreakable. You know, they're not going to flashlight blind you. They're not going to sabo or anything like that. In fact, the bots are in total self-preservation mode. They're not going to do any altruistic actions at all. If you are nearby the hook, they will not go anywhere near it, and that person will die on hook. So you can successfully camp people to death if you were curious about that. Part of the problem with this, though, is that a lot of times when you're in the match, it'll end quicker than you expected because they'll just die on hook. They will not go for flashlight saves, obviously, head-on stuns. They won't even go for pallet stuns. If you pick up a survivor underneath a pallet, you are in no danger of a bot survivor recognizing the opportunity, running up and pallet stunning you. That's not going to happen. The bots also, as far as chases go, you will not get realistic chases at all out of these bots. They will loop, you know, normal loops, like they'll vault the killer shack window, you know, they'll run around a pallet before throwing it. You know, they're not going to just pre-drop. So they do have some strategies when it comes to looping. The problem is that they most of the time don't want to loop. What they want to do, and they want desperately to do this, they want desperately to run along the edges of the map. It's their favorite thing to do, because I think the AI is programmed for distance, first and foremost. And the best way to get distance a lot of times for the survivor AI is to run along the edge of the map away from you. So a lot of times if you choose to chase survivors off of gens, they will run to the edge of the map where there's nothing for them to play, except for extremely unsafe windows at like Z walls and stuff. They love playing these unsafe loops, and it makes for really boring chases. One thing that I noticed that's particularly frustrating is that at these Z walls along the edges of the map, where you notoriously like don't want to go, you're in no man's land, they will vault a window, and then it's like their AI resets or something, and they will crouch on the other side of the window and they'll stealth from you, and then you'll just get an easy hit when you go to the other side of the wall, right? For that reason, if you're wanting to practice killer, I would actually recommend maybe picking an indoor map for this reason, because if you pick an outdoor map like Cold Wind or the new map, there's going to be a lot of like edge of the map hijinks happening. So I think that actually indoor maps like RPD, Leary's are going to be a little bit better for the AI bots. That's pretty much the general behavior of the bots, but they also have individual strategies for specific killers, which is something I was really curious about. The survivors, for all their shortcomings, they are juicers when it comes to avoiding Pyramid Head's M2. I tried playing Pyramid Head against these guys and getting open space M2 attacks, but the problem is that they're so slow that the AI, the M2 attacks are so slow that the AI can accurately predict exactly where they need to go. So there's no mind gaming them. Really, the only time that I was able to get a successful M2 on them is I either got lucky or I got them, you know, in a doorway or over a vault or something. If you try to hit open space M2s as Pyramid Head against these bots, it's slow enough to where the bots will see exactly where the path is, and they will just simply go the opposite way for a second. With that said, they go down very easily to M1s as Pyramid Head. Very easily. But if you're wanting to practice M2 as Pyramid Head, the bots aren't the best option for it. Interestingly, too, Pyramid Head's cages seem to pose a problem for the bots. They tended to ignore the cages completely. I don't know if that's because they couldn't see the cages. Maybe there's some sort of aura reading bug, but basically when I caged people, it was a coin toss as to whether they actually got uncaged or not. A lot of times they just ended up dying on first cage. So yeah, Pyramid Head for this reason, not a great killer to practice with against the bots. Similarly to this, I tried Huntress against them, and they dodge Huntress hatchets very well from mid to long range. And again, it's because they have enough time to predict it. In this sense, it's very not like playing against real players because you can't mind game them. A lot of times against real players, I can throw a mid-range Huntress hatchet away from a survivor, and I know that they'll dodge into it because of how they've been playing, right? This will never happen with the bots. They will never dodge into the hatchet. You have to, if you get a long hatchet throw, it basically has to be because they can't dodge it. They can't, move to the left or right, like in a doorway or something. So Huntress, if you're wanting to practice Huntress, which I know is probably at the top of many people's lists of killers that they want to get better at, you're not really able to get longer range hatchets. So if you want to do short range hatchets or some lower mid range, though, they'll get hit by those constantly. So no worries. Now, the fact that the bots are so good at dodging Huntress hatchets and Pyramid Head M2s, it got me wondering how they would fare against stealth. So of course I did what anyone would do, and I made them play against Insidious Bubba, and I stealthed in the basement, and let me tell you, they had no idea what was going on. They would come for the save every time, and if I came out of stealth before they got the unhook, they would try to run out of the basement. But if I waited for them to get the unhook and then I came in, I would get 2 downs. They never didn't go for the save. If you hook somebody in the basement and you camp there, they are going to come and they are going to unhook and they are going to go down. It's not a surprise, I guess, but I just thought it was funny. They got absolutely destroyed by Insidious Bubba. By the same token, I played Tombstone Myers, and they got absolutely destroyed against Tombstone Myers as well. I did find it interesting, though. They tried to avoid me stalking them from a long range as Myers. So it's like they knew. I didn't know if they were just trying to get distance from me, because it kind of seems like once the survivors detect the killer, they run forever to get away from them, like way further than they have to. So I couldn't tell if they were trying specifically to not let my Myers get stock off on them, or if they were just holding W. But yeah, they got completely destroyed, annihilated by Tombstone Myers. I also played Jump Scare Myers, Scratched Mirror on Leary's against the survivors, and let me tell you, that was so much fun. Actually, that was probably the most fun I had playing against these bots, was playing Jump Scare Myers. They did not know what to do. It was the type of thing where after playing 3 games in a row of playing a stealth killer, Insidious Bubba, Tombstone Myers, and then Jump Scare Myers, I concluded that actually stealth is a little too strong against them. They're a little too blind against stealth. Sometimes they wouldn't even notice that I was there until I was right behind them. So like I would get grabs, for example, stuff that I was like, I guess the AI is just looking straight forward and it doesn't look behind them until it registers the killer is in the vicinity, right? And so I was getting grabs, I was hitting people like a couple seconds after a real player would have detected me, like seen me on their screen. So yeah, stealth killers, very, very good against these bots. I was also curious on this note how the bots would respond to additional objectives that you get with specific killers. So for example, do they cleanse against Plague? Do they solve the box against Pinhead? Do they remove their reverse bear traps against Pig? Do they kick Victor? Do they vaccinate against Nemesis? And the answers to these are yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, basically. So against Plague, they cleansed immediately. As soon as they could cleanse, as soon as they got off hook and they could cleanse, they would do it. And this was pretty much how the survivors reacted to most additional objective. If they had anything else to do besides a generator, they would go do that. It's like the AI has a specific list of things that it goes down. It's like, okay, first, is there anybody to unhook? Is there anybody to heal? Can I cleanse? Can I remove a reverse bear trap? Can I, do an additional objective? Is there a hex that needs cleansing? And then if everybody's full health, if everybody's status free and there's no additional objectives to complete, then they will do gens. And this is what I meant by the fact that they're not going to gen rush you. If you give them literally anything else to do, they will concentrate on that. As far as the box against Pinhead, this was an interesting one. They actually do not solve the box against Pinhead. So if you want to practice Pinhead in custom games against survivors because you want to get better with the chain, just know they're not going to do the box. I got into a situation where they found the box, but then they would just run around with the box and not solve it. It's like I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it seemed like if I didn't move, they would begin solving the box, and then as soon as I started moving, they would stop. So, like, there was one situation where Michaela had the box, and I downed another survivor. I picked the survivor up, and because I stopped to pick up the survivor, she started doing the box. But then I started carrying the survivor to the hook, she stopped doing the box. And the game ended with all 4 of them dying, and Michaela still refusing to solve the lemon configuration. She wouldn't do it. So yeah, Pinhead completely breaks them. Similarly, Pig, they were desperate to remove the reverse bear traps when they were inactive, but the one time I got them to the other survivors to finish a generator and activate the bear trap, they just let it go off. So if the bear trap is inactive, they'll try to get it off, but if it's active, they'll just die. And now I was using tampered timer just to be funny, so I don't know if that factored into it, but yeah, they have an inconsistent behavior against reverse bear traps, it seems. Now, do they kick Victor if you're playing the twins? So this is another interesting observation. I figured out that yes, they do kick Victor, but only if you're not controlling him. If you leave Victor AFK as twins, the survivors will kick him. But if you're controlling Victor and you miss a lunge, normally against real survivors, they'll kick Victor immediately afterward, because that's the only time that you can. You can kick Victor after he misses a lunge, but you can't otherwise. The survivors would not do that though, and I think that's because the AI thinks of you when you're playing Victor as the killer, and they want to hold W and get as much distance as possible from you. So if you miss a lunge as Victor, they're not going to kick you, which is fine if you just want to practice Victor's lunge as twins, but you're not really going to be punished for it in the bot game. So I don't know if this is necessarily a bad thing. This is probably kind of a good thing, because you're just wanting to practice twins, right? Do they vaccinate against Nemesis? They do. They do vaccinate against Nemesis. If they're infected, they kind of treat it like Plague's Cleanse. If they're infected, their number one priority, forget about the gens, go vaccinate. And interestingly, since the zombies of Nemesis are AI, I was wondering who would win, zombie AI or zombie survivor? The zombies kicked the survivor AI's ass. They wrecked them. I think it's because both times it happened, I was in the vicinity. So I think that the survivor AI gets confused because it only knows, I don't think it knows to avoid the zombies. I think it only knows to avoid the killer player. So I was walking towards them as Nemesis, and even though they had ways to get around the zombies, they pretty much refused to. It's like they got stuck. They started running into the zombies because it's like they thought that they should just be able to move through. So the AI is not programmed to differentiate between like other AI threats and the killer. So yeah, that's the extent of my findings playing against the bots. It's interesting because I think if you want to practice nurse or huntress or preferably a killer that has a unique locomotion like hillbilly, oni, nurse, maybe wraith, where it's important to get like the flow of how they cloak and uncloak, then these bots are going to be great to practice against. However, if you want to play a killer that has any kind of additional objective, like I said, Pinhead, Plague, anybody like that, you're gonna stump these survivors. They're not gonna know what to do against you. You're not gonna get a normal game, and I think that's been made clear, and I don't think anybody was really expecting that. But I think the closer they can get these bots to exhibiting behaviors that you see in a normal game, the better it'll be for people to practice on, or just to add in a filler player if like you want to play in a custom game with say 3 of your friends, you don't have a 4th, you can add a bot in, but then you don't want that bot to be absolutely awful, right? So yeah, I don't know if they have any plans to improve these bots. I'm gonna guess not, but just in case they are, I thought I would give some of my feedback on it. It'd be great if you could give them perks, give them easy perks, give them all unbreakable, give them all will make it, give them all, I don't know, lithe, right? They don't have to have auto dead hard or anything, but just some like passive perks I think could really help them. Or they could behavior. This would be such an easy thing to implement. You could have the survivor bot that you add randomly have one of 4 sets of 4 perks. So one could have unbreakable and lithe, and another one could have sprint burst and iron will. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. But it would be cool for them to at least have perks. I'm not saying that behavior should teach these bots how to use flashlights and get flashlight blinds or anything. That might be a little too complicated, but just some passive perks that they could use to make it feel a little more exciting, I think would be great. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the bots. I'm very excited for them to come to the live servers in Dead by Daylight. They're only in the public test build this week. But yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. And I'm also wondering if this means that in the future they may possibly add bots into games to replace disconnected players. Please, 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 I would love that. Just some thoughts from me about these bots. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Have you played against them? Have you had any unique interactions with them? Maybe you played a killer that I didn't play against them. Like, if you played Trapper, did they avoid traps at all, or did they just run straight into them? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. But yeah, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.